The soul itself, unlocated and indivisible, governs the body as God governs the universe. In short, each of us is entrusted with a little kingdom and charged not to be careless in the administration of it. As regards the recognition of God's providence, there are many degrees of knowledge. The mere physicist is like an ant who, crawling on a sheet of paper and observing black letters spreading over it, should refer the cause to the pen alone. The astronomer is like an ant of somewhat wider vision who should catch sight of the fingers moving the pen. He knows that the elements are under the power of the stars, but he does not know that the stars are under the power of the angels. Thus, owing to the different degrees of perception in people, disputes must arise interesting effects to causes. Those whose eyes never see beyond the world of phenomena are like those who mistake servants of the lowest rank for the king. The laws of phenomena must be constant, or there could be no such thing as science. But it is a great error to mistake the slaves for the master. As long as this difference in the perceptive faculty of observers exists, disputes must necessarily go on. It is as if some blind man, hearing that an elephant had come to their town, should go and examine it. The only knowledge of it which they can obtain comes through the sense of touch. So one handles the animal's leg, another his tusk, another his ear, and according to their several perceptions pronounce it to be a column, a thick pole, or a quilt, each taking part for the whole. So the physicist and astronomer confound the laws they perceive with the lawgiver. A similar mistake is attributed to Abraham in the Quran, where it is related that he turned successively to the stars, moon, and the sun as the object of his worship, till grown aware of him who made all these, he exclaimed, "I love not them that set." We have a common instance of this referring to second causes, but ought to be referred to the first cause in the case of so-called illness. For instance, if a man ceases to take any interest in worldly matters, conceives a distaste for common pleasure, and appears sunk in depression, the doctor will say, "This is a case of melancholy and requires such and such a prescription." The physicist will say, "This is a dryness of the brain caused by hot weather and cannot be relieved till the air becomes moist." The astrologer will attribute to it some particular conjunction or opposition of planets. Thus far their wisdom reaches. The Quran says, it does not occur to them that what has really happened is this, that the Almighty has concern for the welfare of that man, and has therefore commanded his servants, the planets or the elements, to produce such a condition in him that he may turn away from the world to his Maker. The knowledge of this fact is a lustrous pearl from the ocean of inspirational knowledge, to which all other forms of knowledge are as islands in the sea. The doctor, physicist, and astrologer are doubtless right, each in his particular branch of knowledge, but they do not see that illness is, to speak, a code of love by which God draws to himself the saints, concerning whom he has said, "I was sick, and you visited me not." Illness itself is one of those forms of experience by which man arrives at the knowledge of God. As he says by the mouth of his prophet, "Sicknesses themselves are my servants, and are attached to my chosen." The foregoing remarks may enable us to enter a little more fully into the meaning of those exclamations so often on the lips of the faithful. God is holy, praised to be God, there is no God but God, God is great. Concerning the last, we may say, it does not mean that God is greater than his creation, for creation is his manifestation, as light manifests the sun, and it would not be correct to say that the sun is greater than its own light. It rather means that God's greatness immeasurably transcends our cognitive faculties, and that we can only form a very dim and imperfect idea of it. If a child asks us to explain to him the pleasure which exists in wielding sovereignty, we may say it is like the pleasure he feels in playing bat and ball, though in reality the two have nothing in common except that they both come under the category of pleasure. Thus the exclamation, "God is great," means that his greatness far exceeds all our powers of comprehension. Moreover, such imperfect knowledge of God as we can attain to is not a mere speculative knowledge, but must be accompanied by devotion and worship. When a man dies, he has to do with God alone, and if we have to live with a person, our happiness entirely depends on the degree of affection we feel towards him. Love is the seed of happiness. and love to God is fostered and developed by worship. Such worship and constant remembrance of God implies a certain degree of austerity and curbing of bodily appetites. Not that a man is intended altogether to abolish these, for then the human race would perish, but strict limits must be set to their indulgence, and as a man is not the best judge in his own case as to what these limits should be, he had better consult some spiritual guide on the subject. Such spiritual guides are the prophets, and the laws which they have laid down under divine inspiration prescribe the limits which must be observed in these matters. He who transgresses these limits wrongs his own soul, as it is written in the Quran. Notwithstanding this clear pronouncement of the Quran, there are those who through their ignorance of God do transgresses these limits, and this ignorance may be due to several different causes. Firstly, there are some who, failing to find God by observation, conclude that there is no God and that this world of wonders made itself or existed from everlasting.